About 6 weeks ago, I gave an example of a gymnast that was talking to a reporter about how she deals with pressure. Olympics were upcoming, and I wanted to know how you deal with it, because a lot of times people fold under pressure. And I share with y'all that she said, I choose to label it differently. Where other people label it as fear, worry, doubt, I label it as passion, excitement, ready to take on the challenge and take the courage that I have inside and just display it and just go all in. And 6 weeks ago, I gave that illustration with understanding of where we were going in the next chapter and a half of James. And I described that because I wanted you to know, as we go through this, and we're going to talk about what it means to surrender, what it means when he says the adulterer, and we weren't going to run from it, we're going to tackle it head on. What's it mean to be a professional Christian? All these different things. I knew what was coming, and I wanted to prepare us to look at it the right way. And I'm here to tell you, because of looking at it the right way and not saying, man, this is just too hard, he's wanting too much, he's demanding too much, knowing that what James wanted was for the church just to truly understand what it means to be a Christian, to understand what it meant for Jesus to give his life up, that we may know him as Savior, and just exactly what it means to have a relationship with him. And that the next 6 messages were going to be tough. We weren't going to run from it. With that, I have gotten texts and emails and had multiple conversations about these subjects. And instead of running from it, you labeled it the right way. And the conversations that I'm having, I'm hearing the church grow spiritually. I'm growing spiritually because this last half of James. And because of that, because of the conversation that we've had, we're actually going to start a new Bible study class for about 8 to 10 weeks. 9 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to continue to discuss what it means to live a surrendered life, what it means to be submitted, what it means to resist the devil, what it means to live in a posture of surrender every single day, and to move away from any notion of what a professional Christian, a check the box thing, I check, I do, and everything's great, because we don't want that to be the identity of this church. And so because of what God is doing and really forecasted a long time ago, we want to continue that. So we're going to take an 8 to 10 week look and study of some of the things that we've seen in James and other areas of the Scripture. And we just want to continue and to expose ourselves to the Lord and to open ourselves up and have a true dialogue of what God is wanting to do within this church. And so the first Sunday of October, we're opening up for the church. We're opening up for every Bible study class and every small group class. And prayerfully, we can continue, and God can continue to tear down and rebuild us as individuals and us as a church so we can be more like Him. But I see that already happening. I see that in the conversations that we're having. I'm seeing it. This place Tuesday was full of people on its knees praying. We joined in the church next door, and we had a time of prayer for churches, for the nation, for each other. And we had a lot of people here. I'm just going to say that. And then over here on Wednesdays, that fellowship hall for the last 2 weeks has been absolutely packed out because we're learning how to study the Scriptures, what to look for, make sure that we are interpreting right. And it's been packed out. We're going to have one more week this Wednesday where we'll finish it up. And because of that, because of everything that we're doing and some people that I've talked to, we've decided to continue what God has started in more of a deep way. And so pray about that. Maybe you say, hey, look, I don't come on Sunday mornings to Bible study. Well, maybe you can come for 8 to 10 weeks. To 8 to 10 weeks. But I'm here to tell you, because I try to be honest and authentic as always. Highly important. If God is moving, then we will continue it. But only if God's moving. Not just because. But if God's moving in the hearts and lives of people, then we will continue it. And I don't think I'll have any pushback in that. So when we sing the song, God is moving and God is doing something, and God is on the move, be excited. Because God is on the move with the people here in this church. And there's no better place to be than there. This morning, we're going to continue our study in James. And I've got today and then one more. Next week, we're having a special Sunday. I've actually got one family coming back to church Sunday and possibly another. And I pray that you're putting forth efforts and prayer in who you would like to invite. And so next Sunday sermon will be completely different. Upon our arrival back the following week, we'll wrap up this book. And probably, I'm thinking the middle of October, we will start a new series on the home. What does the home look like? What does a Christian family look like? What is the responsibility of a husband, of a wife, of the children? What is the atmosphere supposed to feel like? And so we're going to take a look at that for a little while. So we've been going through the book of James. And I got to tell you, for me, he just didn't rock the boat. James absolutely flips it over. If you read it for what it's meant for, James did not write this book just to kind of rock your world a little bit. He wanted, and his intention was to turn it flat over and really look at what Christianity really is, not what man has made it, because we've talked about it before. If we're not careful, what we know to be true as a Christian is a little bit of Bible and a little bit of our own thought that we mix in of our own desires, our own wants, what's going on in our lives. Sometimes we skim a passage here or there. We take it for what we want to take it. And that's what Brooks has been teaching on. And we make it our reality. And somewhere between what the Bible says and what we want it to say, it becomes who we are. And that's our identity. And that was never meant to be the identity of the church. It was never meant to be the identity of individual Christians, but because we know that the church is a bunch of people coming together with their identity. And thus, that's why this has been so important, the book of James, that we're learning together exactly what James is trying to teach. Not a boat shaking, but to turn it on over. Not a bunch of professional Christians that check the boxes occasionally, but surrendered people. More so than just commitment of what I give, surrender is what I give up. Understanding all these things and placing it in our lives. And so that's what he was doing, and that's what he meant to do. And I pray that you've taken that challenge to really allow God to examine your life and to open yourself up and to do the work that he wants to do. As we talked about, things that are in our hands that he wants to remove so he can put what he wants in your hands. Let it go and let the things of the world go. We've talked about everything we know to be true comes from the world or the Word. talking to Eric, and Eric had a great illustration. He said, you know, the difference between the world and the word is one letter, L. And that stands for a big fat lie. The world has the big fat lie. And he wants the Christian church to believe it. James has called the church to submission, humility, and obedience. And that's what you see. You see submission, you see humility, and you see obedience. And we hit it hard where he said, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. And again, James is going to write in chapter 4, 13 through 17, about a life of submission and what it should not look like. What it should look like. So with that, I will read to you James 4, 13 through 17. Not working? Okay. Oh, there it is. Right on time. As I read this, I'm going to read it slow, because when I read this, it was just very interesting, as chapter 3 and chapter 4, and then you get into this, and I got to be honest with you, I took a step back and I'm like, God, what are you saying here? And then, of course, if you ask, he will speak. Look here, you who say, today or tomorrow, we're going to a certain town and we'll stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like a morning fog, a vapor. It's here for a little while and then it is gone. What you ought to say is, if the Lord wants, or if the Lord wills us to, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you are boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil. And remember, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it. It's a pretty interesting passage when I first read it, and I like to examine it with you. Verse 13. Look here. That's an emphatic. Don't miss this. What he's saying is, Joe, don't bypass this section because you don't like it, or you don't understand it, or you don't want to know about it. He's saying, church, Christians, don't just blow by this and say, well, that's not that heavy. I want to go into some deeper things. He's saying, you stop and you really pay attention. Look here. You who say, today or tomorrow, we're going to a certain town and we'll stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. I got to tell you, I was like, what? And if we were in a little study, I'd say, so what is James trying to say here? Because I'm looking and I'm praying through that, and I'm like, okay, James, what are you trying to say? And the question is what's left out? What's left out? Let me read it to you one more time. Look here, you who say, today or tomorrow, we're going to a certain town, and we will stay there a year, and we will do business there and make money. How many conversations have you been a part of like that, or you heard of? That's really the American way. And as I was reading, I just noticed what was left out. There is a lot mentioned about what we will do, and not a single word mentioned of God anywhere. Not one word. And we've been talking about what it means to be surrendered, what it means to submit to God and resist the devil. And all of a sudden, he gets to this point, and he's been blasting, and he's been hammering away, and he's like, hey, you guys over there, you business guys, who kind of say, well, as long as I put some checks in the offering plate, I'm okay. Because, honestly, I don't do anything wrong, and I'm a pretty good guy, and we come to church every Sunday, and we do our thing. James is saying, look, I've been spouting out what it means to be an adulterer, and we hit that head on. We hit on what it means to resist the enemy, to submit to God. We've hit on what wisdom is of the world and what heavenly wisdom is. And now he's saying, hey, you guys over there that all you like to do is talk about business and talk about the things that you want to do and what you want to plan and what you want your life to look like and what your future. You're here too, and you're involved. And let me tell you a little bit about what I think about that. What I think about that is I don't see anything about God. And if we're not careful, we will live our lives on our own terms, doing what we want, and we don't talk about God at all except for tragedy, except when we're talking about a Sunday school class or a Wednesday night class or a special event. Hey, you know that we're getting ready to have this or that. Hey, we need to start talking about what we're going to have for Thanksgiving. Hey, guess what? We're getting ready to have a cornhole tournament and a big barbecue, I think the 2nd of November. That's true, by the way. Just FYI. We'll let you know later. But if you're not careful, I see somebody like, hey, is that right? All right. I'm excited. But, and by the way, I think I can win. Just saying. And by the way, while I'm on it, and I'm going to jump back, I promise. The winner of the tournament, because it's going to be for anybody. So if you got friends that like to do it, it's going to be a big tournament. The winner will get the new CRBC shirt. So we're having a new fall shirt, and we will not share what it is until that day, and the team will get it. Just a FYI. Now, let's go back to what we're talking about. If you're not careful, the only conversation that you have about Christianity, about church, about life, are situations or things that are hurting you or pain or storms of life. And then we usually do all this talking, and then we'll say, yeah, and I just need to pray that God help. And what James is saying, this is not a submitted life. It's not a submitted life. When people are like, he says, hey, today, tomorrow, we're going to go to a certain town, and we're going to stay there a year, and we're going to do business, and we're going to make all this money. It's just so exciting and so fun, and just, that's what I'm concerned about. Not one time is it mentioned that, well, let me discuss my future with God. Let me discuss His plans for my life. As a matter of fact, I feel like I am good in business, and God has blessed me, and I want to do His work. And so maybe God is calling you to go to here or there, or to do this or that. But you know what James is saying? You better allow God to lead you and direct you. And maybe it is your thoughts. So maybe you go to Him and say, God, what are your thoughts on this for my life or for my family's life? That's what he's saying. You see, life is so tough, and it is very complex. There's all these things going on in life. Think of all that is involved in life. Today, tomorrow, peace, pain, buying, selling, gaining, losing, giving, here and going there. Life is made up of people and places, activities and goals, days and years, and each of us making crucial decisions that affect our lives as we live it. It affects our lives. It affects other people's lives around us. And really, the bottom line is that's what we do. We make decisions every single day, moment by moment. That's what we're made up of. You want to know what you're made up of? The decisions that you make and how you make them. Where do you go for your information to make good decisions? That's what we're made up of, one decision after the next. And if that's what we do every single day, how are we making these crucial decisions in our lives? How do we say we submit to you, God, but there's no evidence of seeking God's direction for our lives? We just got done talking about that. James just is finished writing about that, and now he's using an example here. We submit to you, God, but there's no evidence of seeking God's direction in our lives. I submit to you, God, but I make my own plans. I submit to you, God, but I will make all the decisions regarding my life. I submit to you, God, but I have decided my own future. I submit to you, God, but I depend on my own knowledge and how I will succeed in this world. I submit to you, God, but I will let the world and the ways of the world create the atmosphere in my home. I submit to you, God, but teaching my children the centrality of Christ is not my main priority as a parent. I submit to you, God, in prayer. I do. But I have no intention of obeying your direction. So what James is saying is, look, if you're going to submit to God and resist the devil, you want to move away from a checkbox Christianity. You have to do more than just say, hey, I surrender to you, God. You have to do more than singing songs. They have to mean something to you. To mean something to you. You'll have people that will say, hey, I like this genre of music, or I like that genre of music, or I like this style of music, or I like that style of music. I don't think God cares. I think He cares how you live your life. I like this style of music, but I live my life contrary to the Scriptures. You think God's really caring about that? You know why I like contemporary music? And trust me, I like all music. But you know why I like contemporary music? Because it's people living today, writing the things that they think about God today. The hymnals, they were written in the 16, the 17, and 1800s. And by the way, they got blasted for writing those things, because when they wrote those things, you were only allowed to sing the Psalms. And they were cutting edge. And they were special because that generation was writing songs about what's going on in their life. And we do the same. Now, I'm not just trying to say, oh, he's trying to move. No, I'm not trying. Because it's not about when it was written. It doesn't matter some of these things. It matters, is it honoring God? Is it pleasing to God? Is it reflect what's going on, the relationship that we have with Him? That's what matters. What matters is how we're living our lives. If it's just a song, if you're living however you want, if you're not living a surrendered and a submitted life, it's just a song. It's not worship. It's not praise. And by the way, I'm such a different person when I'm preaching. Outside, this nice guy, calm. My mom asked me that all the time. She's like, you just got to turn. I'm like, I don't know what happens. This is a God thing. Can I hit on the parents real quick? This is why we're going to move into the home. And I may step on some toes. That's not my intention. My intention is to share truth. Let me read it one more time. I submit to you, God, but teaching my children the centrality of Christ is not my main priority as a parent. Let me tell you this. It absolutely should be. The main thing is not, I want to make myself clear, okay? Is not getting them scholarships for sports. Now, with that saying, I know some of you go, I love sports. Trust me, I love sports. My son played baseball and football, okay? So I'm not preaching against that. I'm not preaching against education. My son is a college graduate. But sports and education was not on the top of the priority of my responsibility for my son. It was Jesus Christ and the relationship that he has for him. And for me and Pam to do all that we can to not only teach him, but to live a life in front of him, because it's not what we teach them that they retain. What they retain is the picture that they see every single day, and the picture is a picture of your life that you're living in front of them. They will spot you out as a liar. Probably won't call you that, but as a liar, to say, hey, look, God is in charge. God is the central focus of my life. We go to church on Sundays, and you live an unsurrendered life all week long. They know it. They spot it, and they say, look, it's not real for you, and it's not going to be real for me. You can say it, and you know what you're teaching them? You're teaching them to say it too. Oh, yeah, we go to church on Sunday. Oh, yeah, you a Christian? Yeah, I'm a Christian. And you're teaching them to say it, but not live it. And so it is important. Is it important to help them find their dreams of softball? My niece is a big softball player. Yes. Go enjoy. Go push. Help them. There's so many things that you can learn in sports. By the way, that you can learn in sports that parents have a hard time teaching. Because they just don't grasp it when we teach it all the time. But don't miss the point of what true parenting is all about, because it starts and stops with the relationship that we have with Jesus Christ and the meaning it has. Maybe you're not teaching its full meaning because it's really not that meaningful to you. So we're going to talk about that in about a month or so. What our responsibilities are and what our goals are and how do you fit it all together, and to know that you can fit it all together. But know this, Jesus is not on the list of priorities. He is and always will be the priority of our lives and how we teach our children. And that's for all of us. So I submit to God, but make your life more than just a word phrase. Make it a true reflection of your life. What the businessman is saying is really, God, I submit to you in word only, and think you won't notice the difference. God notices the difference. When we're singing these songs, and we go out and live a life contrary to what we're singing, He notices. Maybe you're fooling a husband, a wife, or maybe you're fooling some friends, or you don't fool Him. What we say is, really, God, I don't need you, or really don't want you interfering in my life. When you live your life, got all these dreams and all these plans and all this big picture of your future, and you don't bring Him in, you're saying, I really don't want you to interfere with my life. Well, except when there's something I can't handle. James is saying we make all these plans and leave God out of them. We have no idea what tomorrow holds, and that it is held by the hands of God. So he's saying, look, you make all these plans, you want all this, you leave God out of it. We just talked about surrender. He just talked about submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. And you're making all these plans, and don't you know that your life is short? Don't you know who holds your life in His hands? Look at verse 14. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's a vapor. It's that breath in the cold morning when you go out and you have that smoke come out and you see it for a second and then it's gone. Unless you live in Green Bay or Chicago and you see it all winter long. He said your life is like a morning fog, a vapor. It's here for a little while and then it's gone. And you know, it's so interesting how the Lord brings all this together. That we're talking about the brevity of life on 9/11. I cannot say, man, Joe just put all that together. Absolutely false. I'm not smart enough, wise enough to put all this together. But while we're here, we might as well talk about it. 9/11, great tragedy, loss of life. And we were talking about this in our youth class today, about how all of a sudden, you have men and women waking up, getting up with all these hopes and all these dreams, and they're brushing their hair and they're brushing their teeth and they're kissing their wife or their husband and they're patting their dog and sending their kids on out to school, never knowing that would be the last that they ever lived. You don't know when your last moment is. And that's what James is saying. You make all these plans and you don't even bring God into the equation, and you think that you're going to fulfill these things. You don't even know if today's your last day. Maybe it'd be wise to have him be a part of the plans that you have. So we think about 9/11. I think about my own story. 2 months ago, it was in July, a couple of us, Pam and myself and Corey and Casey and Brooks, we went to get some breakfast in Nashville. And we were eating, and the waitress came, and we just kind of struck up a conversation. And we were talking and giggling, and man, she was just a ball of energy, and we just had a great time. And we were talking about, she was from New York, and talk about New York and compared to the South and Nashville. And we were just giggling and laughing. She was starting to make fun of us, and we just really opened things up. You Southerner, you Northerner. And I was like, well, where do you live now? She's like, well, I live in Green Acres. We thought it was actually Green Acres. But evidently there's this real Green Acres, and it's Kingston Springs. And that just opened up. You live in Kingston Springs? We live in Kingston Springs. And that just, we were just talking, and I think she talked to us more that hour than she even waited. Everybody else's, their coffee was cold. But man, we had a good time with her. Come to find out, her son played baseball, played for the team. Come to find out, she knew Ben and Amanda. So after we talked to them about church, and she's like, well, I really don't have time for church because my two things in life is baseball and work. But maybe something with my son. And I was like, hey, that's an opening with Ben and Amanda. And we were pretty excited to share with Ben and Amanda. I think y'all were gone that Sunday, and so we saw them that Monday for the 4th of July festival. And I went over to Ben all excited and was like, hey, Ben, I met this lady. She was this New Yorker. Gave my best New York accent. She knows you and this and that, and maybe we'll connect. The dad's not in the picture, and maybe we can however we can help her. And the smile I was waiting to see, and the excitement I was waiting to hear, went to much sadness, knowing that Saturday she was killed in a car accident on her way home. It's like, how is that? That's not possible, because I just spoke to her just a few hours ago. That only happens on the news. It only happens in other places. It doesn't happen because God brought her to us. It just worked out so we can minister to her. Gone. And I remember Pam and I were talking, that she said the only thing that really matters right now is baseball and work. I wonder what she would think now. In the end, what matters most? What matters most in life? We have one life to live. We have one life to give. God wants it. You know what he's saying? He's like, if you give me your life, I'll give you life that you can't even imagine. I'll put you in situations. I will give you the we were talking about this in the youth class, about how Hollywood, and look, you're never going to catch me just attacking people. They're looking for the same thing we're looking for. They're looking for peace and joy and happiness and all these different things. The problem is they're looking in all the wrong places. They're looking for peace and harmony and happiness and joy. You're not going to find it in the world. You're only going to find it in Jesus. We have one life to give. As Christians, let's give Him everything that we have. And when we give Him everything that we have, we'll find peace and joy and happiness in areas that you never thought you'd find it in. Gary, I bet you found peace and joy and excitement in areas that you'd never thought you'd find it in. Like, how can you find it in a third world country where they've got nothing? Because Jesus is there. Because we go through Him. Because He is serving. When you serve, you're most like Christ. How do you find great excitement and joy when you serve and when you give? It's all about Jesus. We have one life to live. You never know when your last day is coming. And I know many of y'all have lost loved ones here recently. And life, it's not life and death. It's birth and death. Life is the longevity of what we do and what we give. Give your life to Christ and make it worth something in the end. That's what James is saying. Verse 15 and 16. He says this, what you ought to say is, if the Lord wants you to or wills you, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you're boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil. And then I asked myself, when I was first going through this, I'm like, well, why? Why does all this matter? From the very beginning, I'm like, okay, why does all this matter? Here's the answer. Because God created us to have certain attitudes and convictions that give us a true view of life and God. God's truth about Himself and about life, the life that we live. James is writing about our position and posture. Going back to that again. James wants us to know